She was a hard-working young woman with her eyes on the future.
She was so independent.
She was determined.
She worked 2 jobs.
But there was only one man for her.
She just was so in love with him.
It was her first relationship.
And unfortunately, it would also be her last.
Her mother found the body.
After that, I don't remember anything.
It was so heartbreaking.
But is her death a random act of senseless violence?
That has always been a high crime area.
The investigation will reveal a deadly deception.
Some people are just so greedy.
She was blind. She couldn't see it.
October 15th, 2016. It's Saturday night in Memphis, Tennessee, a city famous for the blues.
It has a very homegrown vibe to it. Isaac Hayes, B.B. King, all of the greats, including Elvis. This is a city which nurtures music.
However, there's more to this city of 600,000 than Beale Street and Graceland, especially in Midtown Memphis.
I've lived over in that area all of my life, and that has always been a high crime area since I was a little girl.
On this fall evening, a troubling sensation comes over Melissa Isaac, who hasn't heard from her daughter, 28-year-old Bria Isaac, for more than 48 hours.
She always called me every morning, every evening, just called me all the time. And I knew something was wrong because I hadn't heard from her.
When we was calling the phone was going to voicemail, and it's like unnormal for Bria.
Bria hadn't been into work either.
Bria's mom had spoken to the manager at the restaurant where she worked. She said Bria left for lunch on Thursday and never came back.
So I then went over to her house.
It's around 8 p.m. when Melissa Isaac pulls up outside her daughter's apartment in Midtown. When Bria's mother arrives, she knocks on the door.
Bria!
And finds it unlocked.
There's a couch pushed up against the door, blocking it, but Bria's mother is determined.
Melissa was able to squeeze in through the door.
Bria, are you here?
The kitchen, the living room, and the bedroom are all empty.
I'm pretty sure she sensed that something was off.
But little will prepare Bria's mom for what she'll find inside her daughter's bathroom.
Bria?
28-year-old Bria Isaac wasn't the type to go looking for trouble.
She stayed to herself mostly. She didn't drink. She didn't do drugs or anything. She was just sweet, nice, and honest, and quiet.
She was like a home person. Even though she was this quiet person, she also had that funny side, but it's around people she's comfortable around. That's just the spirit she brings. Like when she walks into the room, it brightens up. You know, it just brightens up the day. That's the type of person she was.
When she wasn't spending time with her family, Bria was trying to get ahead.
Basically, she didn't do anything but work. And she was a very determined hard worker. She would go in on her off days. She was very determined to try to have things in her life.
And she wasn't afraid of the responsibility, willing to take on new jobs that when needed, new tasks, and she had goals.
She was an independent woman. She didn't look for no handouts, didn't look for anyone to do anything for her.
But for all her independence, Bria was generous, especially with those she loved.
She loved taking care of people. She loved helping people.
She'll help anybody, give a shirt off her back or anything. Anything she could help you with, she would do it. She loves to give.
She made sure that she gave whatever she could to those that she loved.
Between work and family, Bria had room in her life for one more person. Her longtime boyfriend, 29-year-old Joshua Fisher.
Bria met Joshua in high school. They were both young. They fell in love.
He was the only guy that she had been with, and she developed true love for him.
Everything was great. They were young and in love. It appeared this is the man that Bria wanted to spend the rest of her life with.
For 10 years, the couple dated on and off while Bria continued to work and save, eventually moving out of her mother's house.
She ended up getting her own place where she can, get out on her own.
She had it over there on Midtown. And she was paying the rent, paying the light bill, and everything. Working 2 jobs.
She was independent. She made her own money.
Despite her desire to take her relationship with Josh to the next level, Josh wasn't willing to commit.
Bria wanted to be loved. She wanted acceptance and she wanted love. That is what she was looking for. I guess she just thought she could change him.
Bria's love for Joshua was put to the ultimate test when the couple broke up in 2011. Shortly thereafter, Joshua began a relationship with 29-year-old Keisha Norris.
That relationship evolved very quickly, and it really was a heartbreak for Bria, especially when Joshua and Keisha started having children.
But Bria couldn't shake her feelings for Joshua. And when Joshua wanted to reunite with Bria in the spring of 2013, she decided she was willing to give their relationship another shot.
Joshua and Keisha had children together, and Bria, being the loving, giving person that she is, she even took in their children as her own.
She even helped with his kids. She'll go pick the kids up, take them shopping, buy them things on the holidays.
Being with Joshua again was everything Bria wanted. While Bria seemed to be on the path to happiness with Joshua, her family would soon be consumed by tragedy. On October 15th, 2016, Bria Isaac's mother has just walked in to find a horrific scene.
My baby was slumped over the bathtub.
Melissa began to scream, crying out of heartbreak, crying out of the rage of discovering the death of her daughter.
The screams can be heard throughout the complex, and Memphis PD receives multiple 911 calls.
Memphis 911, do you need police, fire, or an ambulance?
It may be an ambulance and police. A woman's on a balcony on Monroe in an apartment complex. She's yelling, "My baby's dead, my baby's dead."
We need somebody over here now. Somebody upstairs is dead. Get a whole lot of people. It's something bad happening.
In October of 2016, 28-year-old Bria Isaac was working 2 jobs and keeping her eye on the future with her boyfriend, Joshua Fisher.
She just was working so much, trying to have nice things.
She been had her own place for a while. She didn't like staying on any one period.
She began to work and live her best life and not only had goals, but also wanted to make sure that even Joshua was taken care of.
But Bria's plans would never come to fruition.
On Thursday, October 13th, 2016, Bria failed to return to work after her lunch break.
For the next 2 days, her family were calling her, texting her, trying to find out where was Bria.
Bria? And then on Saturday, Bria's mom went to her apartment, and that's where she found Bria dead in the bathtub.
After that, I don't remember anything.
The neighbors, they called 911 because they didn't know what was going on.
We need somebody over here now. Somebody upstairs is dead. Get a whole lot of people. It's something bad happening.
It was obvious to Bria's mother, Melissa, that her daughter had been murdered.
Police arrive a few minutes later to a chaotic scene.
Oh. I didn't imagine walking into a situation like that.
The rest of Bria's family has arrived, and the police have the difficult task of trying to preserve a crime scene.
Where you going? Where you going? No. Okay. Listen.
The family was just inconsolable. They were completely heartbroken.
Who found Bria? Who was the one that found her? You? Mom?
As first responders try to get information from Bria's grieving family, homicide detectives arrive and begin their investigation.
They're trying to determine what exactly happened here.
It doesn't take long for detectives to find the cause of death.
She has an obvious gunshot wound to the chest. There was an awful amount of blood.
They begin to piece together how the shooting unfolded, starting with what appears to be a bullet hole in the bathroom door.
We could only assume Bria was trying to run. She was trying to hide.
Had Bria come home and surprised a burglar?
She had just left work. On her lunch break, she set out on her uniform.
After a quick look around the rest of the apartment, detectives don't believe that is the case.
There did not appear to be a robbery gone wrong.
There's no sign of forced entry, and all items of value seem to be undisturbed.
Which leaves detectives wondering, who was chasing Bria when she ran to the bathroom and shut the door?
There did not appear to be any sexual assault.
She was still fully clothed.
Detectives note there's a black baseball cap with a red bill on the living room floor, just outside the bathroom.
The way it was laying in the middle of the floor made detectives think that it wasn't Bria's. It was oddly just left out.
Could the killer have left it behind?
The police have more questions and not enough answers at this stage.
Hoping for some clarity, detectives turn to Bria's mother, Melissa.
Ma'am, we're sorry for your loss. We're going to need to ask a few questions to figure out what happened.
We always tell the families, we're working for you. We're working for Bria now. So we have to try to maintain our wits, and we get the family members to tell us whatever we can.
It was real hard. They was telling me that my daughter was gone.
I know this is difficult, but is there anything you can tell us?
Detectives begin by asking if Bria was dating anyone.
Well, there's Joshua Fisher. They'd been off and on for years.
Was she seeing anyone else?
Maybe someone new in the picture.
No.
According to Bria's mom, Joshua was the only man in her daughter's life.
She hadn't been with no other man but him.
Do you know if Joshua was seeing anyone else?
Keisha Norris. They have children together.
Melissa's answer raises a red flag for detectives.
They potentially got two women fighting over the same man. Jealousy could very well be a motive.
Did Bria and Keisha have a rift? Was there some level of argument that was occurring there? Was there something that occurred with the kids?
Now, Bria and Keisha, did they get along?
As far as I know.
They were never enemies. She even helped with his kids.
However, even if what Melissa tells them is true, detectives will need to rule out Keisha as a possible suspect.
You have to determine your victim's relationship with everyone that comes up.
First, detectives canvass Bria's apartment building, hoping one of her neighbors can give them a lead on the shooter.
They asked around to find out, did anyone hear any gunshots? Did anyone see anything that looked suspicious? Did anyone scream and yell for help?
For now, detectives have no luck locating eyewitnesses. The next step is to find the two people Melissa Isaac mentioned in her statement.
Detectives put out an APB on Josh and Keisha, but Josh was nowhere to be found.
The next day, detectives do have better luck finding Keisha Norris. But when she sits down with detectives, their suspicions are immediately raised.
Bria Isaac was found murdered. Do you know anything about that?
No, I can't help you.
When was the last time you saw Josh?
Look, I don't know anything about this.
It becomes obvious to the detectives that Keisha knew more than she was letting on.
But what is it that Keisha is hiding? Josh's involvement or her own?
Detectives are convinced that this woman could hold the key to solving Bria's murder.
Barely an hour after Bria Isaac's mother discovered her daughter's dead body, detectives investigating the 28-year-old's murder have identified two persons of interest.
At this time, police are still looking for Joshua Fisher, Bria's boyfriend. But they did manage to bring in Keisha Norris, who has children with Joshua.
At this stage, police is trying to turn over every rock that they can.
With her having a relationship with Joshua, I'm quite sure she had a wealth of information.
And considering Keisha and Bria were seeing the same man, they had to rule her out as a suspect.
But when detectives bring Keisha in, things hit a snag.
Keisha was not very cooperative, which really made detectives question just what she knew.
She was entirely within her rights, but the fact that she was uncooperative made detectives suspicious.
Is Keisha hiding something, or is she merely being cautious?
I'm sorry. You just need to talk to Josh. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, where can we find Josh?
He moves around a lot. He could be anywhere.
With their interview with Keisha stalling out, detectives move on to finding Joshua Fisher.
At this stage, the one name that they kept hearing during this investigation was Joshua Fisher.
While the search for Josh continues, detectives receive Bria's autopsy report the following morning, and the findings confirm their suspicions about how the murder occurred.
Bria had been shot twice, once in the head, once in the chest. Execution style by a .38 caliber.
Confirmation of the way Bria died only adds to the heinous nature of the crime.
It was felt that she lived a little while after she was shot, but of course she didn't get any medical attention at all.
Now that detectives know the caliber of the weapon used, all they need is the gun itself.
It was going to take a stroke of luck to find this gun. Truthfully, it could have been anywhere.
The one thing that they needed was that gun. Where was it?
While detectives are still trying to locate Joshua Fisher, a look into his background reveals a disturbing pattern.
The police had previously responded to Bria's apartment on numerous domestic disturbance calls.
Joshua abused her. He would beat her.
This revelation about Joshua comes as a surprise. None of Bria's family had mentioned any abuse.
I didn't know about the abuse through the years and how many officers and stuff was called.
However, none of those calls ended with Joshua in jail.
A lot of times the police were called and she didn't tell the whole story or she didn't prosecute.
To detectives, the question becomes, and the abuse escalated to murder.
It was time for them to find this Joshua Fisher.
Locating Bria's boyfriend still proves difficult.
They couldn't find him.
Word that detectives are looking for Joshua does eventually produce results.
A tip did come in as to Joshua and his whereabouts.
He's in the small rural community of Stanton, Tennessee.
It's about an hour or so from where Bria lived. So the police went down and they saw Joshua.
Detectives find him at a friend's house outside the tiny farming town.
Can I help you guys?
Joshua Fisher?
Yeah, that's me.
We need to talk to you about Bria Isaac.
Is there a problem?
News of the murder appears to hit Joshua hard.
He actually cried and stated that he wasn't aware of it.
Despite his emotional reaction, detectives believe Joshua is involved in Bria's murder.
The police wanted to know, did you kill Bria Isaac? He denied it.
There's quite a few incident reports that would indicate otherwise.
Look, I know we had our problems. I had my problems. But I would never do that.
He's an alcoholic. So when he's on alcohol, he turns into a whole nother person. And he don't listen. Everything has to go his way and only his way.
He fought about everything for no reason at all.
He said that they were off. They were taking a break. He and Bria weren't in a relationship at the time.
Where were you on Thursday afternoon?
I was here.
How long have you been here?
Week or so?
Can your friend verify that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at work right now, but for sure.
He did state that he was there prior to the homicide. He had been there all that time.
If that's true, Joshua can't be Bria's killer. But they need proof that Joshua is lying.
Detectives felt like they had their man, but there were a few things they needed to nail down. First, did Josh's alibi hold up? Where was the murder weapon? They needed to make sure their case was solid before they made an arrest.
Okay. We'll be in touch.
Detectives head back to Memphis. For the Isaac family, they now have the difficult task of removing Bria's belongings from her apartment.
It's difficult to imagine how painful it must have been for the family to be in that space. Knowing what had transpired there and not having justice for Bria, I just can't imagine.
We get over there. Me and my niece, Dominique, which is her sister, her boyfriend.
So they went over to help pack things up, help the mom out.
What happens next will change the course of the investigation.
As they were lifting the couch, what falls out? A gun. It was right there.
Just days after Bria Isaac's mother found her dead from 2 gunshot wounds, the family believes they may have stumbled upon the murder weapon.
Don't touch it.
The family was packing up Bria's apartment, moving things out, and when they picked up a couch, a gun fell out.
As soon as the gun fell out, we jumped back. I told nobody don't touch it.
CSIs had missed it during their initial search of the crime scene.
They concentrated on the immediate scene, and no one thought to check the couch.
Thankfully, it was still there. And once the family members saw that gun, they called the City of Memphis Police Department.
Yeah. I said, I don't know if it's the murder weapon or what, but a gun just fell out this couch.
Detectives rush to the scene and take the gun into evidence.
It's a .38 revolver, which is the same caliber that killed Bria.
The gun is submitted to the lab for testing.
Thank you.
While awaiting the ballistics results, they turn their attention to Joshua's alibi that he was not in Memphis when the shooting occurred.
At this point, there have been multiple stories on the news and more information starts to come in.
One tip in particular proves especially useful to detectives.
Homicide.
A young man contacted the police and said he had some information. He also knew Joshua Fisher.
Detectives invite the man in for an interview.
The guy works at a video game store that is right across the street from Bria's apartment.
They know Josh because he frequents that store.
Detectives are wondering, what do they have with this guy? Is it even relevant to the investigation?
So what made you decide to contact us?
I saw the police outside the apartment where Joshua stayed. And then I seen the murder case on the news. I saw him there last Thursday.
Are you sure?
Yes. He came to the store that day, and I also saw him on the balcony of the apartment.
This is a huge revelation. An eyewitness who saw Josh at Bria's apartment the day she was killed.
The clerk also claims that Josh was not as talkative as he normally was.
The clerk noticed that there was something unusual about his behavior.
It's hard to describe. He was acting kind of weird, you know?
He claimed Joshua wasn't himself that day.
I also brought in the security footage. Hopefully that helps.
Before detectives look at the security footage, the clerk gives them one more piece of information.
I saw him leave the apartment too. He got in a car with some woman.
The clerk goes on to give a description of a woman that catches detectives' attention.
The clerk saw Joshua get into the car with a woman that matches the description of Keisha Norris.
With this information, detectives need to find out why Keisha wasn't more forthcoming when they originally interviewed her. But first, they need to look at the security footage from the game store.
The police see the video footage, and there he was. He had his black hat, a red bill on it. No one could miss that.
The hat is an exact match for the one detectives recovered at the crime scene. And with the timestamp putting Joshua in Memphis when he claimed to be in Stanton, just like that, Joshua's alibi is in tatters.
Joshua couldn't be telling the truth.
With video proof and a witness that puts Joshua at the scene of the murder, detectives now need to bring Keisha Norris in for another round of questioning. And this time, they press hard for answers.
We have evidence and a witness that puts Joshua at the scene as well as yourself.
You picked him up that day, didn't you?
Officers knew that Keisha Norris had been contacted by Joshua.
He just kept blowing up my phone.
He is repeatedly calling Keisha. Obviously, she isn't answering because the calls are non-stop.
Keisha said she didn't answer because she and Joshua recently had their own falling out.
But her phone kept ringing.
After receiving repeated phone calls, some point she said enough is enough.
What did he want, Keisha?
Keisha finally reveals what she's been hiding.
He needed a ride from Bria's apartment.
Keisha picked up Joshua Fisher from Bria's apartment on the day that she was murdered. She, in essence, became the getaway driver.
Memphis to breakthrough in the case. Detectives have placed Bria's boyfriend, Joshua Fisher, at her apartment on the afternoon of her murder.
We can guess he was trying to get out of the vicinity of that apartment. He was trying to leave that murder scene.
Hoping to prove it, detectives are pressing Keisha Norris, Joshua's ex-girlfriend, and the woman who picked him up from the apartment for more information.
And where was he when you got there?
He was outside on the sidewalk.
Unfortunately for detectives, Keisha didn't see Joshua enter or exit Bria's apartment.
According to what Joshua told Keisha, Bria wasn't home.
The detectives are skeptical.
Did you see any blood on him?
No,
And was he nervous or agitated or anything like that?
not really.
She says it seemed like any other day. She picked him up. She dropped him off. That's all she knew.
Now, however, Keisha seems convinced that Joshua is the one who killed Bria.
Why do you say that?
I just know him. And you should have heard some of the stuff he would say to her.
One time, Joshua told Bria that he wished she would be raped, robbed, and killed. And at another time, Joshua stated that he would shoot Bria in her head and spit on her.
I just thought it was all talk. But when he gets drunk, he says things.
So you think he followed through on his threat?
I do. 'Cause she was gonna leave him.
She was trying to move out the apartment. No notice, no anything, just move and not let him know nothing.
She tried to get away from him on several occasions, but she was not successful.
So why didn't you tell us this before?
I have kids with this man. I was scared of what he would do to us.
I'm sure that frightened her. She was just frightened to death.
At this point, detectives have to take Keisha's word. She didn't know anything, she wasn't involved, and Joshua sucked her into this.
Officers were able to rule out Keisha as a suspect.
The following morning, when detectives get the ballistics report back from the crime lab, the findings confirm the revolver that fell out of the couch also killed Bria.
The gun that they found and the bullets that they discovered were a match.
They called back and notified the family that it was the murder weapon.
Now that they have the murder weapon, can detectives prove without a shadow of a doubt that Joshua Fisher killed Bria Isaac?
They needed to fingerprint the gun, see who it was registered to, and then find a way to link the gun to Joshua Fisher.
In the meantime, detectives believe the statement given by Keisha Norris is enough to make an arrest.
Detectives got a warrant and arrested Joshua in Stanton without incident.
The family rejoices at the news Bria's killer has finally been caught.
They called and said they had got him.
When the family learns that the suspect is Joshua Fisher, they are devastated that it was someone they knew.
They were blindsided. I don't think they had any idea that he had harmed her.
I never expected for him to do something like this, to break out trust like that. There was like something you can't get over.
While the family struggles to process the news, detectives sit Joshua down for questioning.
I told you, I was in Stanton when Bria got shot.
We know that's a lie, Joshua.
Once Joshua is confronted with the evidence against him, he realizes that his back is up against the wall.
Joshua cracked under the pressure.
Did you kill Bria Isaac?
It was an accident.
Taken into custody and confronted with the evidence detectives have against him, 29-year-old Joshua Fisher has just admitted to killing his girlfriend, Bria Isaac.
We know you killed her.
I didn't mean to. It was an accident.
An accident?
Yeah.
What he shared with them was he decided that he was going to have a firearm. Not only was he going to carry a firearm, but he was going to now bring that firearm into the home.
Joshua kept the gun hidden in the apartment, but Bria found it.
Joshua's story was that they were tussling over the gun and the gun went off.
It just went off?
Yeah.
And you ran.
Yeah.
Joshua did not seek any type of medical attention for her, nor did he let anybody know where she was.
What Joshua said is he became scared. He didn't want to stick around and call 911.
Instead, he'd called Keisha.
I never meant to kill her. I swear to God.
The detectives are skeptical of Joshua's story. And a look back at all the evidence they've gathered so far confirms their suspicions.
Joshua had a big problem. The story that he gave had to match the crime scene, and that did not match.
Bria Isaac was shot twice, once behind the door, and then the killer stood over her and fired a second shot. There was absolutely no way it could have happened the way that Joshua claimed.
When detectives restart their interview, Josh decides it's time to stop talking.
I prefer that I have a lawyer around for the.
Okay, for that. Okay. But do you have a problem? So do you mind if we still go ahead and take the statement? You just want a lawyer for the video?
For the rest of it.
Okay, so you don't want to talk about anything else?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, you have the right to absolutely do that.
Joshua Fisher is formally charged with the murder of Bria Isaac. On September 17th, 2018, he stands trial. And Bria's family packs the courtroom.
We wanted justice. And my family, we are very close. All of us was there every single day because we wanted justice.
There wasn't no doubt in my mind. He did it. I knew he did it.
According to the prosecution, Bria's murder was the culmination of almost a decade of horrible abuse at the hands of Joshua Fisher.
The prosecutor's theory was that this girl had been relentlessly stalked and harassed and abused, and Joshua was just a predator who took advantage of Bria. And not only took advantage of her, but took her life.
The prosecution theorizes on the afternoon of October 13th, 2016, she'd finally said enough.
The prosecution believed that Joshua waited around the neighborhood that afternoon and followed Bria home on her lunch break.
Why didn't you answer my calls? You dodging me?
Joshua, I'm done. We're done. When he showed up at her home on her lunch break, Bria knew that it was time to leave Joshua Fisher. She should have been out of that relationship. It was toxic. She knew it. Joshua could not handle rejection, could not handle Bria getting the strength to stand up and finally say that she's not going to take it anymore.
Based on the crime scene, prosecutors believe that when Joshua pulled the gun, Bria bolted for the bathroom.
I can only imagine how scared she was when she was running towards that door. She opens the door and she gets in there.
But it was like too late.
The bullet went through the door.
Once Bria was wounded, Joshua walked in and fired once more.
She was murdered in cold blood.
He took her life because he knew she was leaving him.
Instead, it had been Joshua who left.
He murdered Bria and didn't even have the decency to pick her up off the tub.
On his way out, Joshua had stashed the gun, called Keisha, and arranged his escape.
It's just shocking to me that Joshua, after killing his girlfriend of 10 years, could be so calm, cool, and collected as though nothing happened.
But something had happened, and the prosecutors have proof.
There was basically no way Joshua could refute the evidence because there was so much of it against him.
Between the hat, the surveillance video, the murder weapon, and Keisha's testimony, it was really overwhelming.
Joshua was found guilty, and he did receive a life sentence in prison.
He'll never see the light of day again, and her family could finally at least breathe a little bit better knowing that justice had been served.
We was all excited for the verdict. Yes, we was. It brought closure.
Give him some time to think about what he did and think about was it worth it.
She did not deserve that. Bria was a very good person.
She was very loved. She knows she was one of the sweetest person that, been called home.
She was such a sweet, beautiful person. I never hear her voice or nothing. It's not one day I don't think about my child.
However, the family does take some solace in the thought that Bria's story can serve as a warning to others.
If you're in an abusive relationship, I don't care if you're young or old, get out of it. If you're scared or what, tell someone.
If you can't do it on your own, it's help out here. Don't sit there and let no one continuously beat on you. You're worth more.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
The Mirror Thief, a chronicle of meth, masks, and the American dream. Prologue, the weight of the badge. The sirens in the rearview mirror were the first sign that Virginia Dissette's world was about to fold in on itself. It was a Saturday afternoon in Colorado, the kind of day where the sky is a bruised shade of blue and the air carries the scent of pine and impending snow. She had been thinking about her chiropractic appointment, the mundane discomfort of a stiff neck, and the dinner she had planned for her family. When the cruiser's lights flickered red, blue, red, blue, she felt the instinctive jolt of a law-abiding citizen. A speeding ticket, an annoyance, a dent in the monthly budget. She pulled over, her mind already rehearsing the apology. But the officer who approached her window didn't have the weary, bored expression of a man writing a citation. His hand rested near his holster. His eyes were hard. Virginia Dissette? Yes, officer. I'm so sorry. I must have been. Ma'am, please step out of the vehicle. There is a warrant out for your arrest. The words didn't make sense. They were sounds without meaning, like static on a radio. A warrant. You're joking. I don't joke about felony forgery. Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut, Virginia felt the first shiver of a nightmare that wouldn't end when she woke up. This was the moment she realized that someone else was living her life. Someone she had never met was using her name, her face, and her reputation to burn down everything she had built. In that same moment, miles away in a dimly lit trailer, a woman named Tammy Carroll was staring at a computer screen her pupils dilated to the size of saucers. She hadn't slept in 3 days. The methamphetamine humming in her veins made the world feel electric, sharp, and infinitely possible. On the screen was a digital template for a check. The name on the account was Virginia Dissett. The mirror had been stolen. The heist had begun. Chapter 1, The Chemistry of Desperation. To understand the crime, you had to understand the drug. Methamphetamine was not like cocaine or heroin. It didn't offer a brief escape or a heavy sleep. It offered focus. It offered a jagged, artificial productivity that turned desperate people into overnight experts in graphic design, forgery, and logistics. Tammy Carroll's world was a blur of residential mailboxes and the red flags of outgoing mail. In the suburban sprawl of Denver, a red flag on a mailbox was a beacon for a predator. It meant there was a bill inside, or a letter, or a check. It meant there was a piece of someone's life just waiting to be plucked. $50, Tammy whispered, handing a small baggie of white crystals to a runner who had just dropped off a stolen purse. Or a $50. Your choice. The runner chose the drugs. He always did. Tammy took the purse to her office. A kitchen table cluttered with scanners, high-end printers, and bottles of acetone. She reached into the leather bag and pulled out a wallet. She didn't care about the cash. That was for amateurs. She wanted the driver's license. She wanted the Social Security card. She wanted the identity. She looked at the photo on the license. A woman named Roberta Corcoran. She didn't look like Tammy, but that didn't matter. In the meth-fueled underground, they had dressers. They had women who could put on a wig, a pair of oversized sunglasses, and a certain air of suburban entitlement. With the right makeup and the right attitude, any woman could become Virginia Dissett or Roberta Corcoran for the 3 minutes it took to stand in front of a bank teller. It's a rush. Tammy would later tell investigators. Going into a bank, looking a teller in the eye, and walking out with $1,000 of someone else's sweat. It's better than the high, but the high was the reason. The ring was a machine that turned stolen paper into white powder. And the man who kept the machine oiled was Michael Schreckingist. Chapter 2: The King of Paper. Michael Schreckingist was the top dog. In the loose-knit community of Denver's addicts, he was a legend of sorts. He wasn't just a thief, he was an architect. He didn't just print checks, he built lives. Schreckingist's house was a fortress of paranoia. He had cameras mounted in the trees, on the roof, and covering every square inch of the backyard. He lived in a state of hypervigilance, fueled by the very drug that made him so prolific. While the rest of the world slept, Michael was awake, perfecting the Harley scam. It started with a convenience check those unsolicited offers credit card companies send in the mail. Most people throw them away. Michael saw them as blank checks for a new life. He found one belonging to a woman with a $25,000 credit limit. He didn't just want groceries or gas. He wanted a statement. He walked into a dealership and bought a Harley-Davidson motorcycle for $17,000. He used a counterfeit ID and the stolen check. He rode the bike off the lot, a phantom on a chrome beast, fueled by someone else's credit and his own audacity. To Michael, the people whose names he used weren't people. They were data points. They were accounts to be drained. He didn't see Virginia Dissett sitting in a jail cell, terrified and weeping because she couldn't afford the $10,000 bail. He didn't see her watching people in orange jumpsuits being hauled off to a place she never belonged. He only saw the ink on the paper. Chapter 3: The Ghost of Wheaton. While the meth heads in Denver were fighting for scraps of identity, a different kind of predator was stalking the suburbs of Chicago. Wheaton, Illinois, was a place of safety. It was a town of manicured lawns and high school football games. It was the last place you expected to find a professional. He was known as the Wheaton Bandit. He didn't use stolen checks. He used a handgun. His first hit was a master class in tactical precision. He didn't just walk in the front door. He arrived before the sun, hiding in the bushes, watching the employees arrive. He was patient. He was disciplined. When the tellers approached the door, He emerged like a shadow. He wore a balaclava, not a cheap ski mask, but a tactical hood used by SWAT teams. He wore a coat that seemed bulky, hiding the outline of what investigators believed was body armor. And he indexed his weapon. Look at his finger. FBI agent Eric Cayley said, pointing at the grainy surveillance footage. He's not pulling the trigger. His finger is along the slide. That's law enforcement training. That's military. This guy isn't a crackhead looking for a fix. He's a professional. The Wheaton bandit didn't just take the money. He took control. He ordered the tellers to the floor. He knew about die packs. When a teller tried to slip one in, he didn't panic. He sneered. What do you think I am? Stupid. I used to work in a bank. I know what that is. He hit once, then twice, then 16 times over 5 years. He became a bogeyman. A ghost with striking blue eyes that haunted the dreams of every bank employee in the county. He was the antithesis of the Denver meth ring, where they were sloppy and chaotic. He was cold and surgical. But both were symptoms of the same disease, greed. Chapter 4, The Unraveling. Detective Jim Rock was a man who believed in the truth. But the truth was becoming harder to find in a world of digital forgery. When he first saw the checks with Virginia Desette's name on them, he thought he had his culprit. The tellers had identified her. The IDs matched. But when he called Virginia, he didn't find a criminal. He found a victim who was more terrified of the police than the thieves. They were dressing women up to look like me. Virginia told him, her voice trembling. Wigs, sunglasses. They stole my life. Detective. Rock began to pull the thread. He found Roberta Corcoran. He found the links to Tammy Carroll. He realized he wasn't looking at a single thief, but a tangled web. He began a campaign of psychological warfare against Schreckingist. He would drive to Michael's house and bang on the door, knowing the cameras were watching him. I know you're in there, Michael. He'd shout, and I know what you're doing. We're going to be talking real close one day. The end for the Denver ring came on July 31st, 2002. Even the most careful addict eventually gets sloppy. Shreckingest, his mind frayed by the very drug that made him sharp, tried to use a very bad ID. He used the name Benjamin Bryce Taiwan Kim, a name that didn't match his face, using a check that had already been flagged. The police were called. He didn't run. He just sat there, the weight of 100 stolen lives finally catching up to him. Chapter 5. The Price of the High. For Tammy Carroll, the reckoning wasn't a prison sentence. It was a judge's voice. "You're a drug addict," the judge said, looking down at her. "And I don't ever want to see your kids in your care again." The world went silent. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence of an empty heart. 3 of her children were in foster care. Her youngest was placed for adoption. No other sentence could have been worse, Tammy would later say. Prison was nothing. Losing my children. That was the day I decided to die or change. She chose to change. She traded the office of forgery for the rooms of recovery. She traded the rush of the bank for the slow, painful work of sobriety. Today, she works the road to sobriety group, using her past not as a source of shame, but as a map for others. She got her children back. She makes in a month what she used to make in a day, and she sleeps with a clean conscience. But for Virginia Dissett, the damage is permanent. The charges were dropped, but the arrest record remains. In the eyes of the system, she isn't innocent. She's just someone they couldn't prove was guilty. Chapter 6. The New Frontier. Identity theft didn't stop with Shreckingest. It evolved. Agents Kirsten Gregg and Danya Davis are the new face of the war. They don't just look for male snatchers. They look for the LimeWire predators. They look for Kim Merritt, an addict who stole $140,000 using file-sharing software to raid unsecured computers. They tracked Kim to a desolate RV on the plains. Inside, they found a microcosm of the modern crime. Credit documents scattered next to a crack pipe. It's an all-consuming lifestyle, Agent Davis observed. The next fix is the only thing that matters. And identity theft is the easiest way to pay for it. While the agents fight the addicts, companies like Trace Security hire good thieves like Jim Stickley to break into their own systems. Stickley, dressed as a fire inspector, walks into banks and walks out with backup tapes containing every customer's social security number. It's really easy, Stickley says with a shrug. If you look the part, people give you the keys to the kingdom. Chapter 7, The $1,000,000 Shadow. Anita Jans was a woman who believed in the solidity of her life. She had a home, a mortgage, and a credit score she had nurtured like a prize garden. But in September of 2005, a single phone call from a mortgage broker turned her reality into a hall of mirrors. Anita, I'm looking at your report here, the broker said, his voice hesitant. I see you have more than one mortgage. Anita laughed. It was a nervous, fluttering sound. No, I don't think so. I have the one house, the one loan. That's plenty for me. Ma'am, I'm seeing properties. Lots of them. Nearly $1,000,000 worth of real estate in your name. The panic that hit her was physical, a cold, oily sensation that started in her stomach and radiated to her fingertips. Somewhere out there, a stranger had taken her name and used it to buy an entire portfolio of homes. They were building an empire on her foundations. And when that empire inevitably crumbled, she would be the one left in the ruins. The average victim spends 600 hours cleaning up the mess. Anita spent months drowning in paperwork, title companies, and mortgage institutions that treated her like a criminal rather than a casualty. It wasn't until she found ID Watchdog, a new breed of company in the rehab industry, that she felt the first glimmer of hope. We make sure it's done completely, they told her. But even as her credit report began to clear, the psychological scar remained. These people don't want your car or your stereo. Anita warned. They want you. They want your most precious commodity. Chapter 8, The Invisible Infiltrator. If the meth addicts were the blunt force trauma of identity theft, Jim Stickley was the surgical strike. Stickley didn't use drugs, and he didn't need a wig. He needed a uniform and the silver tongue. Working for Trace Security, Stickley's job was to be the good guy who stole everything to show you how easy it was. His favorite role was the fire inspector, with a generic shirt, a fake badge, and a confident stride. He could bypass the most expensive security systems in the world. We walk into a bank, Stickley explained, his eyes twinkling with the mischief of a man who knew he could rob you blind. I tell them I'm there for the annual inspection. They see the shirt, they see the badge, and they just give you the keys. They lead you straight to the data center. Inside the server rooms, the high security vaults, where the digital lives of thousands were stored, Stickley would calmly fill his empty black bags with backup tapes. These tapes contained everything: social security numbers, mothers' maiden names, home addresses, account balances. We walk out the front door, he said. 90% success rate. And the most terrifying part, we meet with the staff a few days later, and they don't even recognize us in our street clothes. They realize they handed the kingdom to a nice, average guy. Stickley's work proved that identity theft wasn't just about hackers in dark rooms. It was about human nature. It was about our desire to trust a uniform, a smile, and a story. Chapter 9, The Clinical Scam. As the authorities in Colorado and Illinois grappled with thieves and bandits, a new shadow was emerging from a place of prestige. The medical office of Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez was a man of high standing, a healer in the eyes of his community. But behind the closed doors of his Chicago clinic, a different kind of alchemy was taking place. He wasn't just treating patients, he was harvesting them. The scheme was simple, clinical, and devastatingly lucrative. He billed for surgeries that never happened. He manipulated insurance codes to extract millions from a system designed to help the sick. But as the federal investigators began to circle, the doctor's panic began to manifest in darker ways. Money was the motive, but the preservation of his lifestyle, the luxury cars, the private schools, the high society invitations was the obsession. When a whistleblower named Joyce Brandon began to ask questions, the doctor faced a choice: the end of his career or something much more permanent. Nobody in the world had any motive to kill Joyce. The prosecutor would later argue, except for a man who had built $1 million lie and feared the truth more than he feared God. The doctor's gamble would lead to a courtroom drama that exposed the rot at the heart of the American dream, where greed could turn a healer into a monster. Chapter 10, The Art of the Heist. While bank accounts and identities were being drained, a more tangible form of wealth was being targeted in the cold storage units of Fine Arts Express. The art heist wasn't about a thief in a mask climbing through a laser grid. It was an inside job, a betrayal of trust that turned masterpieces into bargaining chips. Fine Arts Express was supposed to be a sanctuary for the priceless. Collectors, museums, and estates trusted them with canvases that held the history of the human soul. But the greed that infected the Denver meth trailers had a sophisticated cousin in the world of high-end logistics. Investigating the missing pieces was like chasing ghosts through a gallery. The thieves didn't just take the paintings, they replaced them with silence, manipulated shipping manifests, and a complex web of lost inventory. It was a heist that relied on the very thing Jim Stickley preached, the assumption of legitimacy. If you have the right clipboard and the right key, nobody asks why you're moving a Rembrandt at 3 a.m. Chapter 11, The Teller's Prayer. For Jana England, the Wheaton Bandit wasn't a professional or a tactical mastermind. He was the man with the gun who stole her breath. On the day of the third robbery, Jana looked at the door and saw the nightmare made flesh. The bandit stood there, steady and commanding. She couldn't bring herself to look at his face. She stared at the floor, her hands clasped in a silent, desperate prayer. "I know you have more money," he said. His voice wasn't a scream, it was a cold, flat statement. "I have no more money," she whispered, her hands shaking so hard she thought her bones would rattle. When he saw the die pack in her drawer, the bandit's composure slipped. For a second, the professional vanished, replaced by a snarling, nervous animal. "What do you think I am? Stupid." Jana prayed he wouldn't get so nervous that he would shoot. She lived through it, but the memory became a permanent resident in her mind. Every time a customer walks in with a heavy coat or a quick stride, she feels that cold hand on her heart. She didn't lose her money that day, but she lost her sense of peace, and that was a debt the bandit could never repay. Chapter 12. The RV on the desolate plains. 25 miles outside of Denver, in the flat, wine-swept desolation of the plains, Agent Danya Davis stared at an RV. It was a rusted, claustrophobic shell that smelled of chemical fumes and old laundry. Inside was Kim Merritt. When the agents entered, they didn't find a high-tech hacker hub. They found a woman surrounded by the wreckage of a dozen lives. Credit card applications, bank statements, and Social Security numbers were strewn across the cramped space like confetti. And right next to them, as predictable as the sunrise, was the meth pipe. Did you use anyone else's Social Security number when you opened this? Davis asked, holding up a fresh account document. No, ma'am, Kim said. Her eyes were darting, her skin sallow from the drug. That's legit, because you know I'm going to check it. Kim, the tragedy of Kim Merritt wasn't just the $140,000 she had stolen. It was the all-consuming lifestyle. The drugs sat there, a constant temptation that turned a human being into a scavenger. She stole to stay high, and she stayed high to forget what she had stolen. When the handcuffs clicked, the same sound Virginia Dissett had heard months earlier, Kim didn't fight. She just sighed. The fix was over. Chapter 13, The Architecture of a Lie. The task force for the Wheaton Bandit continued to churn through suspects. Agent Cayley and Agent Forkas lived in a world of indexing, balclavas, and police scanners. They studied the way he moved, the way he parked his car on one-way streets, the way he used inclement weather as a cloak. He's a professional bank robber. The Department of Justice classified him. But to the task force, he was a puzzle with a missing piece. They looked at the surveillance tapes and saw the outlines of body armor. He wears that because he expects a fight, Cayley noted. He's prepared to exchange gunfire with us. That's the most alarming part. They wondered if he was one of them. A cop gone wrong. A soldier who brought the war home. The hypothesis was a bitter pill to swallow. If he knew their tactics, if he knew how they investigated, he was always 2 steps ahead. The $50,000 reward was a lighthouse in the dark, hoping to catch the eye of someone who knew the man behind the mask. But as the robbery stopped in 2006, the bandit became a myth, a ghost story told in the break rooms of Illinois banks. Chapter 14, The Silent Auction of Souls. The art heist at Fine Arts Express wasn't just about canvas and oil. It was about the erasure of cultural memory for the sake of a quick buck. The investigation led by federal agents revealed a systematic gutting of private collections. It was a slow-motion crime, occurring over months in the quiet, climate-controlled darkness of the warehouse. The thieves were methodical. They knew which crates wouldn't be opened for years. They understood the rhythm of the facility. They didn't just steal. They curated their own illicit gallery. By the time the first owner realized their Picasso was a high-quality reproduction, the original had already passed through 3 different hands in the European black market. This isn't about passion for art, an agent remarked, looking at the empty frames. It's about the liquidity of beauty. To them, a masterpiece is just a very expensive stack of $100 bills. The betrayal cut deep. For the collectors, the loss was personal, an amputation of their family history. For the thieves, it was just another successful transaction in a career built on the assumption that nobody is really watching. Chapter 15, The Surgeon's Cold Edge. Back in Chicago, the walls were closing in on Dr. Martinez. The federal audit of his clinic hadn't just found clerical errors, it had uncovered a vast, pulsating fraud. The millions he had extracted from insurance companies were the lifeblood of his decadent existence, the penthouse overlooking the lake, the vintage wine collection, the hollow prestige. But the fraud was only the beginning. Joyce Brandon, his head nurse for 15 years, had seen too much. She had seen the patients who walked in for a consultation and walked out with a bill for a complex spinal fusion that never took place. She had kept her own ledger, a secret record of the doctor's ghost surgeries. When the FBI first contacted her, she hesitated, but the weight of the lies became too much. She agreed to testify. Martinez knew. He could see it in the way she looked at him across the sterile glare of the operating room. He didn't see a colleague. He saw a threat. He began to plan not a surgery, but an extraction. The night Joyce was found in her car, the official report spoke of a tragic accident. But for the investigators who knew about the ledger, the scent of antiseptic on her clothing didn't match the scene. It matched the clinic. The healer had become a butcher, carving away the only person who could stop the flow of blood-soaked money. Chapter 16, The Informant's Gamble. In the Denver underground, the fall of Michael Schreckingist created a vacuum of fear. Tammy Carroll, facing the loss of her children, made the hardest choice of her life. She became a ghost within the ring, feeding information to Detective Jim Rock. "He's printing again," she whispered into a burner phone at 3:00 a.m. "New templates. He's moved the operation to a motel on Colfax." Rock moved in with surgical precision. But Schreckingist was a cornered rat with the energy of 1,000 lightning bolts. He fought. He hid behind his cameras. He burned documents in a bathtub as the door was kicked in. The aftermath was a graveyard of tech. Melted hard drives, half-printed checks, and bags of meth that looked like crushed diamonds. Tammy stood in the shadows as Michael was led away in chains. She had saved herself, but she had betrayed the only family she had left. It was a cold victory, the kind that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth even as you walk toward the light of a drug treatment center. Chapter 17, The Ghost in the Mirror. By 2008, the name Wheaton Bandit was synonymous with failure for the local FBI. The sketch, that haunting image of the man with the tactical hood and the piercing blue eyes, was posted in every post office and police station in the tri-state area. And then, silence. The robberies didn't just slow down, they vanished. Some believed he had died. Others thought he had retired to a tropical island with his $250,000 haul. But Agent Cayley had a different theory. He didn't stop because he was rich, Cayley said, tapping the sketch. He stopped because we saw him. That witness, that old sorry wave, it broke his illusion of invisibility. He's out there living a normal life. Maybe even sitting next to you at a diner. But he's always looking in the mirror, waiting for the reflection to change into the face on this poster. The mystery remained an open wound. Every time a new bank robbery occurred, with a hint of tactical precision, the task force's phones would light up. But the signature was never the same. The bandit had become a legend, a shadow that proved that sometimes the mask is the only thing the world ever gets to see. Chapter 19, The Ghost in the Operating Room. The trial of Dr. Martinez was a spectacle of fallen grace. In the high-ceiling courtroom of Chicago, the man who once moved through the city's elite circles sat reduced, his expensive silk suit suddenly looking 3 sizes too big. The prosecution's case was a surgical strike of its own, built on the foundations of a ledger that had cost a woman her life. He didn't see patients, the assistant U.S. attorney declared, pointing a finger that felt like a gavel. He saw ATM machines with heartbeats. He billed for bone grafts that were never performed, for incisions that never bled, and for hope that he never intended to deliver. The defense tried to paint him as a victim of a complex billing system, a man too busy saving lives to notice the administrative errors of his staff. But when the FBI presented the forensic evidence from Joyce Brandon's car, the microscopic traces of surgical-grade antiseptic that only existed in Martinez's private supply, the silence in the room was absolute. The doctor didn't look at the jury. He looked at his hands, those steady, gifted hands that had traded the Hippocratic oath for $1 million insurance scheme. When the verdict of guilty came down, there was no outburst. Only the sound of a man finally breathing out the lie he had lived for a decade. He was sentenced to 20 years, a lifetime in the eyes of a man who was used to the finest things. His penthouse was seized. his cars auctioned off, and the medical board stripped his name from their registers. The healer was gone. The butcher remained. Chapter 20, The Red Flag Warning. In Colorado, the war had moved from the streets to the screens. Agents Kirsten Gregg and Danya Davis sat in a dimly lit office at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of data streams. They were the CFI criminal fraud investigators, and their new target was the digital ghost of Kim Merritt. She's out on bond, and she's already hitting the servers, Greg noted, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. She's using LimeWire like a fishing net. People leave their My Documents folder shared, and she just reaches in and takes their life. They tracked her through a series of IP addresses that zigzagged across the metro area. It wasn't just about mailboxes anymore. It was about unsecured Wi-Fi and the invisible vulnerabilities of the modern home. They saw her memorizing Social Security numbers as if they were mantras, opening lines of credit before the victims had even finished their morning coffee. It's the meth, Davis said, watching the activity logs. It gives them this jagged, endless energy. They can stay awake for 72 hours just typing, just scanning, just stealing. To them, it's a game where the prize is another baggie of crystal. When they finally cornered Kim in the RV, the transition from the digital world to the physical one was jarring. The credit cards in her purse were symbols of a high-tech heist, but the crack pipe next to them was the reality of the cost. It makes me do it, Kim had whispered. But the law didn't care about the why. It only cared about the what. And what Kim Merritt had done was turn 1,000 innocent lives into a digital fire sale. Chapter 21, The Rewards Cold Echo. The $50,000 reward for the Wheaton Bandit sat in a federal escrow account, a growing pile of traders' gold that no one seemed brave enough to touch. For Agent Cayley, the money was a source of constant frustration. Somebody knows. He barked at the task force meeting.